Again, we are using the handout that I gave you. It's on the screen here as a model, but we're not doing it in exactly the same way. What they tell you to do is to go back to the one we did from Chapter 2, and then they say remove all the table tags, you know, the table, the TR, the TD, etc., and then, you know, do a few other things. I thought that was just, could be confusing. How's that? So I thought if we just went in and built it from scratch ourselves, we would be better off. But as always, I would recommend that you read the whole thing. All right, we will still change the opening tag. You know, we will put a main tag in there, etc. All right. I don't know why they go nuts with deleting these bold properties, etc. I don't have any idea. All right, but we are going to follow, at least try to follow the steps that are in there, such as, okay, right underneath the form tag itself. All right, so that's as we start here, everybody, right underneath our form tag, okay, we're going to put a main tag in here. Main. Now I'm going to take the ending main tag, so we just put in a main tag right under form. But after we want to get rid of that ending tag and put it right before the end of the form. Like that. All right. So we added a main tag right after our form tag, and we ended that main tag right before the end of our form tag. Now, do you all know this? Again, I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence, but I'm going to take everything under the main tag, everything, and highlight all of it. And I can hit tab, and it'll tab everything for me. I don't know if you knew that or not, if you cared, but it's a nice little way of formatting things. All right. Everybody's got that done, correct? All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to right mouse click on the name of our project. We're going to go to Manage Nuget Packages. So right mouse click on the name of your project. Mine is Jeff Scott, Chapter 3. Choose Manage Nuget Packages. Go over to Browse. Type in Bootstrap. In the box right under Browse. Now, we're not going to be using version 4 because they still have the beta one. So we're just going to go down to the Twitter Bootstrap that's right here. Everybody get that? We right mouse clicked on the name of our project. All right, not on the solution, but the name of the project. Right mouse click, chose Manage Nuget Packages, or whatever the heck it was. What is it? Manage Nuget Packages. So we chose that, which brought this up. We clicked the Browse button, typed in Bootstrap, and we're choosing Twitter Bootstrap. Second one down. Then click Install. All right, it shows you what it's going to install in here, and click OK. All right. We don't need this, basically, this README file, but so I'm just going to close it. What I do want you to understand, and I probably said this the other day, but I'm going to say it again anyway, just so we're sure we're all clear here. It added this content folder. That's where it puts all of its CSS. So we're going to add our own CSS file in just a minute. We're going to put it in there. We could have our own CSS folder, but there really isn't a reason. Why do they call it content instead of CSS? They did. I don't really know why. All right. Also, what was added in here was a fonts folder, and that's got all those glyphicons if we do want to use those. Again, one of the things that's changed in Bootstrap 4 is the glyphicons have gone away. All right, you get them from Font Awesome. Okay, and finally scripts. Okay, so we've got all that stuff, but the most important thing is that we need probably three things. We need the Bootstrap. We can just use the minified. The bootstrap.min.css. We'll need that. Okay, and I didn't even have to open it, but all right, just so you see that. So we need that. We are also going to need from scripts, we are going to need the Bootstrap min.js file. And we're going to need jQuery. What I don't like about using this version is it gives us jQuery 1.9, which is actually a really old version now. All right? We'll live with it. With what we have to do, it's really and truly not going to matter. All right? But just for completeness sake. So we can close the package manager now. All right? So that's the first thing. So I'm going to just bounce back and forth between these because we did start a new application. We did add Bootstrap, Nuget, etc. We did all that stuff. We added the default file. We don't have a style sheet to delete. We will make one later. All right. We do have a main tag that we put in. We don't have to worry about removing those because, again, we started brand new. We added the HTML controls. All right. We don't have a font bold property. All right. And right now, I think you already know this, and maybe you did it, but right now if I do a file, save all, and I go in and run it, again, it won't look pretty. It will not be responsive. Does that make sense to everybody in here? It's not responsive because we put absolutely nothing in to make it responsive. It doesn't line up because there's no CSS yet. There will be. All right, we'll worry about all that stuff later. And of course, if I don't know how I got an extra A there, but I did. And the calculate button doesn't do anything. Literally, I think there's 10 lines of code we have to put in. And out of those 10 lines, 2 of them are curly braces. All right, so there's like about 6 lines of code we actually have to put into the program. That's it. I want to fix that. I want to get rid of that. I've got amount there twice, so I've got AA, so I'm going to fix that. All right. So we have literally done the first 6 steps. Now, take a look at the handout I gave you and look at those first 6 steps and make sure you agree with that. All right? Again, where it said to remove things, since we started new, there was nothing to remove. Does that make sense to everyone? But I believe everything on this first page on the front side is done. All right, so then let's turn it over. All right. It says go to the head section of our document. All right, so jump up to the head. And I guess the first thing we could do, that I don't even know if it said to do that or not, but we could come in here and under the title, we could write price quotation. You really should have a title. All right. One thing that you may want to think about is, especially this semester and even, and next semester too, of course, but when you go in and you start looking at your portfolio, run everything that's in there. Make sure it runs. I know it might sound real simple, but it's amazing. If you put, a link to some of your own stuff in there and for some reason the link is wrong, that's going to look pretty unprofessional if somebody goes to go and try to open up your portfolio. But also, little things like, price quotation, putting a title in, stuff like that. You never know what a prospective employer is going to be looking for. You don't. All right. So under the title, we're going to come in here. We're going to put that viewport line that you see in line 7. It's kind of long. Whoops. Hopefully I put it in correctly. So that's step 7, right? Now, again, you never know when you go in to do an interview So let's say that Ethan's going in for a job as a web developer, all right? And they ask him, do you have any experience with Bootstrap? And he says, some. It's kind of limited, but yeah, we did some work with Bootstrap. And it's not impossible if that happens that you're going to be asked, can you explain that meta tag to me? All right? So just basically in generalities, if you're trying to make a site that's mobilely responsive, you'll always say Viewport. All right? Viewport just basically says, for lack of better words, that what you're doing is going to be mobile. All right? Or at least has the ability to be mobile. And then what we're saying is width equals device width. That sounds really weird, and I don't know why they set it up like that, but they did. What it says is, especially on a phone, try to use 100% of the width. That's all it's saying. And it's saying initial scale equal 1, all right, which means bring it up at 100%. The 1 is 100%. All right, so basically it's a tag that allows your site to be mobilely responsive, all right, for lack of better words. All right, questions on that? So again, we're done now with the first 7 steps. Step 8, we are told to add a new style sheet named site.css to the content folder. So I will go over to the content folder right here, right mouse click on it, choose add, go to new item, find style sheet, and we're supposed to call this style.css. We're not going to put anything in it yet. Site? Oh. Okay, site.css, sorry. I would never take off for something like that anyway, but you're right, let's do it correctly. So there's site.css. All right, right now, basically there's nothing in it. And I've shown you this before, but by now everyone should realize that we can grab this. I'm gonna put in a blank line here. All right, we can grab that site.css and we can drag it right there so we don't have to physically type that in. If you want to type it in, you can always do that too. Any questions on any of that stuff? All right. What we should have put in, though, if you look on the screen, because no one asked this, I was hoping someone would, but no one did, is I should come in here and grab that bootstrap.min.css and drag that in above the link we just put in. You said that too fast. Well, then just look on the screen. You should have these 2 lines right there that are in blue. And the order does matter. All right? Typically in your own in your own CSS file, you will overwrite some of the Bootstrap stuff. Typically that's what you'll do. All right? The other thing that we're told to do, if you look up on the screen, okay, is we want to come in and we want to add first the jQuery minified, and after that, the Bootstrap minified. So what we have done in these steps, and this was step 8, 9, and 10, is we added these right there. Another question you could conceivably be asked, Brady, what does minified mean?
No blank spaces.
Yeah, it's all, any white space that can possibly legally be removed has been removed. More than anything else, it's all the line breaks. All right? Other than very minimal comments, those have all been removed. All right? And typically that'll shrink the size of the file down a lot of times by more than half. Why would you want to do that, Evan? So it'll load faster. That's the sole reason. You're looking for any kind of edge when you're writing a website to try to get it to load as quickly as possible. Plus, there's probably a pretty good chance that somebody has already downloaded that if they've been going out to other sites anyway. And it might be cached already, so that'll speed it up too. Now, so I'm asking, we have now done all 6 steps on page 1, I guess, and 8, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on step 2. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? This is your chance to ask. Remember, the order matters. It wouldn't matter if you put the scripts before the CSS. Plus, some books you will find, and this, believe it or not, people get into arguments over stuff like this. There are many people who believe those 2 script tags should go way on the bottom right before your ending body tag. Because that way you're sure everything has been loaded by the time you get to those. Not everybody agrees with that. All right, this author doesn't do it that way. Okay, yeah.
So moving forward, will we be using the Bootstrap 4 for the rest of these, or?
I'm just planning on using 3 at least for a while.
Okay, I just didn't know if the jQuery on like a lower version would matter.
I don't even know what jQuery, what version they put out there. I haven't looked, so.
That'd be good.
All right. But again, last chance. So if I look at this now, the way this has changed, I'm going to save all, and I'm going to run it again. And I didn't do this the first time, foolish me on my part, but when you look at it, doesn't look any different, not to me at least. All right. However, if I start shrinking it down, it's starting to a little bit look like it's responsive. It really isn't yet, because we haven't put anything in yet to make it responsive, but we'll start doing that. All right. Last chance. Any questions on anything numbers 1 through 10? Because I'm going to expect that the next time you take a test, you'll be able to do all that stuff. You'll be able to use the package manager to add Bootstrap. You'll be able to add your own CSS file. You'll be able to bring in jQuery. You'll be able to bring in bootstrap.min.js and bootstrap.min.css. All right? That's just going to be a given from now on. All right. So we're up to step 10. I'm sorry, step 11. Okay? So they tell you to go in, says for the remainder of this exercise, you should view your changes after each step. And I found that really helped. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll do some stuff and then we'll go on. We'll do some more stuff and then we'll go on. Okay? All right. Maybe not exactly in the order they've shown it, but we could get down here now. Now we're down to here. Okay? Now the first thing that we're told to do is this H1 tag right here. We're told to put that inside of main. Okay? You'll understand why in just a second, or hopefully you will. So I'm going to highlight it, Control X to cut it, come into main, put that back in there. All right? So the first thing that we want to do in here, all right, we've done that. And really, if you look at it, if I go into design mode, it doesn't look any different except that now that it's inside of main, it looks a little more squished. All right, but it really isn't any different. It has not changed. Our interface isn't going to look very different if I run this now, okay? But one of the first things that we are told to do, so I'm going to jump back into source mode here, all right? So one of the first things we're told to do is we've got our form, and you already see this. We got an ID. We got a run at equal server. We've got all that stuff. That's good. But we want to add something, and we're told to add this class equals form dash horizontal. And you'll notice that since we added bootstrap.min.js and CSS, you can see that the IntelliSense is kicked in. All right, so I'm just going to hit tab. What does that do? Can somebody tell me what that does? It puts it. What it's going to do by default, it's vertical. So what we want on ours, what we want is this to be and this to be on the same line, as Valerie said. If we didn't do that, they'd be on separate lines. All right, we don't want that. Again, you're told that, to add a form class equal horizontal. Now, the next thing we're told to do is to take main and say here class equal container. Now, this is actually, believe it or not, kind of important. Most of the time when you see a website out there where you've got something where class equals container, Most often, it's not a main, it's a div. Did you hear that? Now, it would have been totally legal for us to leave main as it was and put a div right underneath that, right underneath main, and said div class equal container. We could have done that too. The author could have said that, but he didn't. All right? The point is that everything we're doing in here is going to be inside of our container. All right? That's where we'd be able to add all of our Bootstrap classes, etc. All right. The next thing that we want to do, and this you will start to see a difference in the way it looks, is we want to come to our H1 tag, and we want to say there, class equal Jumbotron. Okay, just like that. It's up on the screen here. So far, taking it from the top, I'll come right back down here in a minute. So far, taking it from the top, all right, we added this meta tag, and that was like in step 6 or something like that. 7. In steps 8, 9, and 10, we added these. All right. Then we came in, and for our form, we added a class equal form horizontal. For our main, we added a class equal container. And for our H1 rather, we added a class equal Jumbotron. Any questions on any of that? All right. Now notice if I come back into design mode, now it's starting to look different. That's the natural Jumbotron. Now, since it's class equal Jumbotron, if we don't like the way that looks, we can come back into our site.css file and say .jumbotron and do anything we want to it, correct? That is why we must put our own CSS file below the bootstrap.min.css file, because we would be overwriting what was in there. All right. The key to being able to understand working with this stuff, this is my opinion, for whatever it is or is not worth. All right. But everything that we're going to be doing in here, we're going to be working with divs, with a lot of different divs. All right. Just so you're aware of that. What I did, and this is the way it is typically done. All right, if you look up on the screen here, I'll go right back into source mode in just a minute. But I set up one div to handle this. If you look up on the screen, that's one div. That's one div. That's one div. That's one div. And that's one div. Does that make sense to people? So each row was basically set up as a div. All right, and you say, well, did you say ID equal row? No. All right, what we're going to say in there for each one of those divs is we're going to say class equal form group. All right, that's in your chapter. We did go over it a little bit the other day. So what I'm telling you is I want to come in here and I want to grab everything that's in that first row. Now, so far, we haven't added the validators yet, correct? We will add those later. I don't care about them right now. We will add all that stuff. All right. I've got a total of, I think, 129 lines on mine. And when you look right now, we're about half done. Okay? But we've got all that stuff for the validators that I put each thing on its own line. And there's 4 validators. So that's probably a good 30 lines of the code right there. We'll do that stuff. We will. I'm not that concerned with that right now. I'm concerned more with laying this stuff out. All right, we'll put in the validators as we get to them. So for right now, this is what makes up my row 1. Would you agree with that, looking at the screen? If it helps, and I'll put this up there, and you might say, no, it doesn't help, it makes it more confusing. Then don't do it. But I can come up here and say row 1. If something like that helps you, you don't have to do that. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in a div. And I'm going to say div class equal form hyphen group. Now, what's the problem with putting in a div like this? What's going to happen when I close this off? Puts it an end. And I don't want the end to go right there. So I've got to move the end down here. where I want it to go. So it's going to go here. Now, again, looking at the screen here, everybody, I'm going to highlight all of this, and I'm going to tab it over. I've got a couple of the first year students, and they're very good students, but for whatever reason, they refuse to tab and line things up. And then they wonder why stuff doesn't make sense to them when they see it on the screen. All right? Again, to me, that's much easier to read. I'm going to even take this a step farther. If you look up on the screen here, I'm going to go at the end of this because I put row 1 here. So I'm going to put a comment after this that says end row 1. You don't have to do that. The program doesn't run any better. You could even make the case that the program runs worse because every time you put comments into code, the code gets bigger, so you get code bloat. I'm willing to put up with that because whoever is going to go and work on my stuff, all right, hopefully at least, it's going to make more sense to them as far as what's going on, etc. All right? Okay, I'm going to grab those 2 line breaks that I've got right here, and I'm just going to hit enter a couple times. 3 times. You don't have to, but I'm going to do that. All right? Why? Because now is the time that we want to come in and we want to put in our validators. All right? This is the order that I decided to do this. It might not be the order that the author did it. So if you go back and look at it and you say, boy, what the author did sure made a heck of a lot more sense, then that's the way you should do it. When you are taking a test, the reason that I'm telling you that you should read every number that's on the test, read through the whole test first and then start it, is it might be Dominic might be taking the test. He might say, it makes more sense to me to do step 8 first. Then that's what he should do. All right? But if you've read the whole test, then you've got an idea of everything you're being asked to do. Plus, with every test that you take, and hopefully I did it on the test that I just gave you, but there should be a rubric on there, and a lot of times that's what people look at. Well, yeah, there is. This is worth 10 points. This is worth 20 points. If for some reason you fall way behind and there is a half an hour left and you've got it only half done, then I might start looking at, if something on a 100-point test is worth 40 points, I might start looking at that and try to make sure I get some of that done. Because if I lose 40 points, even if the whole rest of the thing is right, I get a 60 and I fail. All right? Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to go over to my validators. Okay, and I want to come in and I want to add the required validator, and I'm going to put it right there. Okay, so I put in a required validator, and then right underneath it, I'm going to put in the other one, which is the compare validator. Okay, so I've got both those in here, and I'm going to clean this up in just a minute, but I put both of those in, my required validator and my field validator. All right, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to start prettying these up a little bit right now. I haven't changed names. I haven't changed the error message. I haven't done any of that stuff yet. I will.
You mean
What's that?
the range validator?
Did I do it again? Okay. You're right. Make that a range. There we go.
Good job, man.
So, as Ethan so eloquently put it, put in a range, a required field validator and a range validator. Okay? Now, you know the kind of stuff that we're going to have to put in here, correct? Everybody agree with that? Okay. So how is this system going to know? I'm asking you this. How is this program going to know after we do the control to validate and all that other fun stuff? How is it going to know that this stuff, how did it know to put it on that line? How did it know that?
Because you put them in the same form group.
One at a time. What was yours?
The same form group?
It's in the same form group. All right? It's in that div where the class is form group, right? So it's smart enough to know that. Now this is for the sales price. And again, I'm showing you how I do things. If you don't agree with them, you don't have to necessarily do them that way. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start with my required field validator. All right, and it's for the sales price. So I'm going to change the name to required field validator sales price. All right, so that's the first thing I did was to change the name. Okay, run that equals server. I'm just going to change the message so it just says required field exclamation point. Okay, that's fine. All right, you may or may not remember this stuff, but the next thing I'm going to put in here is display equals dynamic, which says basically only display it if you have to. All right, so we've got our error message in there. We've also, remember, need our control to validate. All right, I'm doing all this stuff. We could have done it from the properties window, but I'm doing it all right here. And that's text box, sales price. Okay, finally, we're going to want to add a CSS class to this. We're just going to call it error. Now, right now, we might get it, it may not show that because I haven't created that yet. But the reason I'm doing it like this is I want to make sure you understand there are so many different ways that you can do this stuff. I'm not using the properties window now. I'm just keying the stuff in manually. You can do it that way. By no means do you have to do it that way. All right, so that's my first one. I'll leave that up there for a second. Then we're going to do next, we're going to do the range validator. Now, if you look up on the screen here, because this is again, you'll see this kind of thing. Some people will say, you know what? I'm just going to call mine required sales price. That's a better name. You can even make a case that it is. All right? I like to leave the entire name of the control in there, so that eliminates any doubt. You don't have to worry about typing it after the first time, right? Because we have IntelliSense. So we never have to worry about it after that. All right? So in much the same way, does everybody have this? All right. I'm going to change the name of this one to Range Validator Sales Price. Again, I was told when I worked for AT&T, when we had people that came in for interviews, and we either had them do coding tests or we asked for examples of their code, to look for things like, do they name things well? Or do they call it Range Validator 1? They didn't like people like that because they figured that if people were going to school, they'd already developed bad habits. And they were going to bring them to the job. All right. So, very similar type of thing in here. So we're going to come in here. We will make the error message. Just say, I think it must be 10 to 1,000. I'm trying to keep them fairly short. All right, so that's all we have in there so far. We need to add all the other players, as you'd guess. Control to validate. Display equal dynamic. What else? Got the error message already. We'll put in our CSS class again. Again, I'm putting in error, even though we don't have the error class written yet. It'll still be fine. We shouldn't get any errors or anything. Remember, we need the maximum value, which we said was 1,000. And we also need the minimum value, which I think is 10. And finally, we need the type. Let's do something a little different here. All right. Let's set the type equal to currency. Okay. Why? Because everything we're doing in here is currency, basically. If you don't like that, you want it double, make it double. It's really not going to matter. All right. Somehow I lost my ending tag for this. There it's back. All right. Is there anything in either one of these validators that people do not understand?
Is the CSS class supposed to be a capital C in CSS?
This, it really won't matter.
Does mine are okay?
Yours are capitalized? Okay.
I don't know if it mattered. I was just reading.
Yeah, I don't think it matters one way or the other. All right. Again, any questions on any of this stuff? All right. There's still something that we missed, and that is what we were told. If you look up on the screen here, right now, remember, it's looking pretty crummy. But what we're told is this should take 3 columns, this should take 3 columns, and this together should take 6 columns. Same thing with the next line, 3, 3, and when we add those two, 6. Why 3, 3? And what does 3 and 3 and 6 equal? 12, which is our grid system, right? All right, which is, I think why they told you to do it like this. All right, so I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to jump back up near the top. So that was our label, right? I'm going to come over by that label that's right there, and I'm going to stick the class right in there in the label. You can do that, or we could have put this in a div. Now, I want to show you both ways. So before you type anything in, just please look, okay? So we can say here, right here, we can say class equals col SM3, which means it's going to take 3 columns, all right? We can also tell it in here, control label, all right? So we can do that, or we could have actually come in and put a div in here. And we could have said for that div, class equals that. We could have done it either way. I think it makes more sense to do it the way I'm showing it to you right here. You may or may not agree with that. All right? But I'm telling it now, I want you to take up 3 columns. Does that make sense? And notice what it says. Can somebody tell me this? SM3. Can you tell me what that means?
Small.
That means small devices and above should take 3. When you get to extra small, which is typically for a phone, they will stack. So they will be a single column. Does that make sense to people? All right. Let's finish this one and then we'll take a break. All right. So we've got all that stuff in there. Now, I don't even know because I've never tried it, but I have never tried putting in classes in here for this. Instead, I take this whole thing right here, and I'm going to wrap it into a div. I'm going to put some stuff in the beginning div tag. But now that I put that in, I'm going to tab that over so it looks a little nicer. All right? So now I come in for the div, and I say the same thing we set up here. Class equal col SM3. Oops. Sorry. Copy. Paste. All right. So now I have told the system that both of those columns, each of those columns, however you want to say it, is going to have a width of 3. And the funny thing is, look at it now. That looks really bad to me. All right. Ideally, it's going to look a little better in just a couple minutes. Okay. So I'm jumping back into source. And if you look up on the screen, now I want to take both of my validators, both of them. And I want to wrap them in a div tag that's of size 6. So I'm going to grab the div tag I had up here, copy it to the clipboard, put it right up above where I am, but change it from 3 to 6. All right, and then put in my ending div tag at the very bottom of this. And then everything that's in between there, I'm going to tab over. And I know that I said it quick, etc., and it's real big, but let me try to cut it down a little bit in size. So I did this. I realize now it's very small on the screen, but hopefully you can see that. All right. So I have told the system now 6 columns for small devices and above for my validators. So that's going to take up half of my width because that's 6 out of 12. And each of the other 2 are going to take up 3. Does that make sense? All right. I think we all need a break. So it's 1:52. Let's come back at 5 after, okay?